Hi guys, I am Dr. Amy Nelson and welcome to my little Facebook Live on my little Wellness Wednesday where I talk about a topic that is interesting, or it's a question that I keep getting, or it's something that I see trending on TikTok or whatever it is. So I'm a naturopathic doctor and I am, here in Austin, Texas. I've work at North Star Healing Center and I work with people in lots of different ways, but my three main areas of expertise are digestive health, hormonal health, and neurotransmitter health. So naturopathic medicine is a type of medicine that looks at root cause, and we analyze that, and we try to work with changing the habits that are kind of leading you down a pathology path. So we're trying to work with nutrition, work with habit changes, maybe we work with supplements and different herbs and different modalities that way. So we are working at root cause and trying to change pathology, and it's a tool in the toolbox. If you are needing a medication, that's okay, but we try to work at optimizing your wellness so that you can minimize medications. And but if you do find yourself in need of one of those medications, we know that that's the necessary path. So we try to walk with you through the whole journey. That said, today we are going to talk about a common question that actually gets asked about multivitamins, right? So do I need to take a multivitamin? What is a multivitamin? This is kind of an interesting situation, and I do get asked this quite a bit. I'm surprised I haven't done a Facebook Live on it yet, but today is the day. So what is a multivitamin, and are we all created equal? Well, right away, if we kind of put some logic to this, we can start to really develop some questions, right? The first one is, are we all equal? No, we're all different ages. We're all different genetics. We're all different epigenetics, right? So we have different worlds that we live in. We have different sets of ways we've experienced the world. Our stress levels, our hardships, our perseverance, our health habits, maybe even our energy levels, right? So all things like that drive the health habits. So what we eat, what we kind of strive for, the changes that we commit to, things like that, right? So we're all different. We have different bodies, we have different beliefs, we have all this different thing. Do you think one bottle of, multivitamin for all humans is going to probably fit the needs of all humans? Oh, and by the way, I'd like to just take a one a day, one capsule. Can we put all of that in one capsule? No, we cannot. And so you start to really think like, I don't know about this multivitamin. And then when you go look at the label, we look at, it's like a sprinkle. It's like we've taken the whole spice cabinet and we've taken one or two leaves of each spice and we put it into one thing, and we think, oh, it's meeting all my needs. It's in all these little microgram dosages. And hey, Brittany, it's good. It's you and I talking about multivitamins today. So we have all these kind of like, when you look at a multivitamin label, it's usually what we call sub-therapeutic dosages of all. It's trying to be very comprehensive, but there's only so much space in a capsule or even in a tablet, right? If you press it together and kind of bind it in a tablet, you don't want to be taking a tablet that's like this, right? You want something that's like not a horse pill too. So you want to, a multivitamin is trying to do that. It's trying to put everything in one small space to kind of fit the needs of everything so it can be marketable. So in that situation, we start to really question the idea of, do you need a multivitamin? Because most of the time it doesn't feel like you're actually getting any needs met by any of the dosages that are on the bottle. The other is the recommended daily allowance. And the place that I like to actually look at, and this is when I took, when I studied nutrition at NUNM in Portland, we used always the Linus Pauling Institute. It's affiliated with Oregon State. And so the Linus Pauling Institute it's online. You can go, it's a great library of a lot of different nutrients that you can look up. And it actually, it tries to validate. So you find out quickly that a recommended daily allowance is oftentimes just a guess. It doesn't necessarily have really good substantiated data to kind of create an RDA. So the Linus Pauling Institute kind of goes into that and really discusses like an RDA and then studies showing this. Sometimes they're aligned, sometimes they're not. So that's important to know. Second is like your personal testing might be completely different. So an RDA might be quite pointless if you have a lot of pathology, if you have something you're dealing with, especially if you're doing blood work. Like you can do blood work on the B vitamins, you can do blood work on iron, you can do blood work on a vitamin D. So if you've done blood work and you see, and even, in our world, we have nutrient panels that we can run. So we see the deficits there. So then are you going to have to take more than the RDA? Well, yeah, because you're at a deficit. So you have to take more to fill up the bank account. So that happens sometimes where somebody's like, the RDA is this. I'm like, yeah, but your vitamin D is 19. You need more vitamin D. We're taking more than the RDA, because we're trying to, you're withdrawing in the bank account. We got to put more in there, so it's this idea that you're meeting the needs of what the body's experiencing. That said, why would you be nutrient depleted? Well, like we just mentioned, maybe some driving pathologies are happening. Remember, inflammation is expensive to the body. We've got to repair things. The other thing too is like, if somebody's like, I take this multivitamin, and then I'm like, yeah, but you're inflamed and you have a GI system that's inflamed. That means like your stomach acid is low, you've got poor pancreatic output, poor bile concentration, and then the whole GI system's got trouble. Are you absorbing anything? No. I shouldn't say that. That sounds a little ones and zeros, but yes, you're absorbing stuff because you're absorbing some stuff, of course, but are you absorbing well? Not really, So sometimes a multivitamin, I think, is a promise that is unfulfilled most of the time because it's really not achieving a lot of wellness. And this came from a class that I took many, many years ago, or it actually was a CE that I took, oh gosh, God, it was so long ago now, maybe even like 5 years ago. So it is the idea of like, you have good nutrition and then you've got multivitamin, right? Let's do a study where we can see if nutrition, if having a good nutritional habit, what health outcomes that has versus like standard American diet with a multivitamin, what health outcome that has. Of course, the good nutrition won, right? So I tell people if they ask me this question, I'm like, take your multivitamin is good nutrition. Like that's what we want to strive for. So if we really eat a lot of, eat the rainbow, we eat a lot of like, summer's coming through. So we're going to have a beautiful kale salad that's just huge with lots of like tomato and carrot and all the goodies, right? So maybe you put some protein on it. Maybe you put some avocado heart or avocado on it, or those little artichoke hearts. I love those. You just fill that up with all sorts of like fun, nutritious things. So you're eating the rainbow, right? You're snacking on berries. You've got, maybe you're going to have, carrot juice today or something like that, right? So you've got a lot of these healthy habits with a lot of antioxidant rich foods and nutrient dense foods. So now you can see that you're actually getting a lot of nutrition out of your nutrition, right? So your nutrition is the place where you're actually getting support, you're getting key things, you're getting things that are really bioavailable. You're getting a lot of calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium. All of that is coming through, right? The nutrition. So a lot of the absorption, making sure the absorption is there. And so that will outshine, and that will get you better key health outcomes than, a struggling diet with a multivitamin. Now that said, when would I give a multivitamin? Well, yeah, in people who just like, their only vegetable today is that multivitamin. Like maybe that's the person who really, yeah, they probably need to take that. And, it kind of happens a lot with kids, and maybe like, I mean, nothing against teenagers, but no, actually a lot of the teenagers in my practice, like they have really great nutritional choices. I'm always very impressed with a lot of, nutrition choices that I'm hearing out of young people. So I shouldn't, make a stereotype that teenagers don't eat well. But I mean, I think as we're younger, we have this idea that we can kind of be invincible and we can eat at Taco Bell, myself included. I always joke that when I was younger, a bean burrito at Taco Bell, I thought I was being super healthy. You know what I mean? So I think we've all been there on some level. And those health habits, like if somebody is making those health habits and we're seeing a lot of inflammation, meaning like you're eating out quite a bit and you're making choices that are like restaurants that don't necessarily care about health and well-being. They probably have a lot of hydrogenated oils. There's a lot of processed. There's a rare vegetable. It's just stuff like that. A lot of fried foods. You're thinking about that. A lot of sugar-dense foods. A lot of fat-dense foods. These kind of things. So if that's happening quite a bit, and a person just is really not, in that space of eating in that different way, then yeah, maybe they need a multivitamin. I totally get it for that reason. My son was a picky eater, so I had a child who really didn't want to eat a vegetable for like years. And so it was really hard. So, I mean, we ended up doing a lot of smoothies with a lot of powders, and, I did a lot of things like that. Yeah, and then as soon as he could swallow capsules, I did, oh gosh, I used to have him here, Indigo Greens by Orthomolecular. He would do great on even just 3 of those capsules a day, and that was better than nothing. So I really get it on lots of levels when somebody's like, that's the only nutrition I can get in this loved one, Yeah, I get it. That's probably where we need to be. Usually a multivitamin, if I have to pick one out, like I just mentioned, I usually would try for a powder, because remember, you're trying to get tons of nutrition in this little serving. So a powder, and make it up as a smoothie, make it taste yummy, that might be fine. Like you're doing that. So it's a scoop of something. And then if that's not happening, or the person you don't want to make a smoothie today, then yeah, you will see something. And typically the serving sizes on those are like 6 capsules a day, which means like you can do 2 capsules 3 times a day. That spaces it out a little bit better. 3 capsules morning, 3 capsules evening, but some people, I feel like their limit is 3 capsules a day. They can't handle it. So even 3 capsules a day, half that serving size, is better than nothing. So in multivitamins, like say, you've got things like brand names like Centrum and those kind of things. They press a lot of, vitamins into a tablet, and then the tablet itself is, full of a binder. So it's really actually hard to break that down. I remember in nutrition class, our teacher was talking about like, oh, hey, Adriana, good to see you. My teacher in nutrition class was talking about, they took one of these multivitamins, poor quality multivitamin, and put it in like vinegar overnight, and still the next morning you fish it out and you can hit it with a hammer, so it doesn't dissolve at all very well. A tablet should really dissolve in water. I mean, let alone, yes, you have stomach acid, and you have gastric juices and you have enzymes and all that kind of thing. But really, like if you cannot dissolve that thing, then it's probably, you're not even like, getting nutrition out of it at all, So that said, like, multivitamin, yeah, most of the time, if you can get your person to do a really, really good nutrition change and commit to that, and what you're asking for of people is to be healthy 85 to 95% of the time. yes, there's going to be a small percent of the time where you're going to go have fun and go, it's your birthday or whatever. That's okay. You know, we want there to be like, I don't want people to feel shame around their nutrition. And so, oh yeah, the one multivitamin, that's actually a good one, Adriana. I'm glad you brought that up. Pure Encapsulations does make a multivitamin that has pretty absorbable stuff in it. And that will be a multivitamin. I forgot about that one. That's actually not a bad one. And yeah, so if you are stuck in that other camp where you're like, the only time we're getting any healthy stuff in is in a multivitamin, that's not a bad one to take. So that would be a capsule version, you know. So yeah, when you are making changes for somebody, you don't want to shame their diet. I get it. And of course, the person who's like having a hard time with their health choices, like you would just talk to them and be like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? And, you know, why aren't we having, like, why are we having a hard time committing to this? And then really listen to where they're at with their struggles, right? So food shaming gets anybody nowhere. We got to quit the shamey type stuff, right? And start the human understanding type stuff, you know, and really identifying with somebody who's in a state of overwhelm, or maybe they just don't know. I've had conversations before with clients and we just talked about how to shop, you know, how to go to the grocery store. And I think a person that I worked with once didn't necessarily realize like you could buy a portion of things at the grocery store and then freeze it. Like we talked about how to freeze meat, you know, and you don't, you know, it doesn't, she was like, it goes bad so quickly. I was like, well, you could freeze it, you know, like you take a portion out and then you freeze the rest. And we just talked about like basic ideas on how to do groceries. Even today, I was talking to one of my clients about when I buy citrus, right? I buy like lemons and limes and what is the other one? Oranges. So I put them in a bowl and kind of midway through the week, like probably about now, I'm always fishing through the bowl, seeing which one's kind of getting old. And then I juice it, right? So then I stick it and I put it in my little juice. So I usually have like a juice concoction of some type of citrus mixture. And then I fill the rest up with water. So maybe there's like, I don't know, I usually pick like 5 to 6 that are looking like they're turning in some way, or not turning, but you know how they are. They get a little overripe. They mush a little bit more, right? So they're ready to go and be a juice. And so then I put them in my juicer and I put, you know, it makes a little concentrate in my little pitcher, and my pitcher is about, I don't know, 1.5 liters. And then I just fill the rest with water. And then I always like to sweeten it with, I like that Nova powder by by Numedica. And I'll put a scoop of that in there, mix it up. And it's kind of like a lemonade, limeade type idea. So that's how I go through the citrus. And then, yeah, we have citrus as a snack, right? So, but if we're just not going through the citrus like, you know, we want, then that's the process that I have in place. And let's say, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could actually peel those things and freeze it too. Like that would be a fun thing to do if I were making like a smoothie later. You could stick those in there too. So fruit to me, like I'm always monitoring it. And if it's like, well, I don't seem to be eating the grapes like I had planned on Sunday or whatever, you know, if it's by a couple days and we haven't really touched it, then I'm usually just, you know, making sure they're clean and then sending them into the freezer. And we're going to be using that in smoothies, or if I make ice cream or something, you know, we'll be using that. So just, you know, talking to people about like the habits of interfacing with your groceries, you know, and then it doesn't feel so daunting. And it does take some meal prep and it does take some stuff, but you know, after you get used to that and get your brain wrapped around it, it's no big deal. Now, that said, you know, a multivitamin sounds nice to people, I think, because they want to take one thing, right? And that really kind of harkens into the idea of really prioritizing your supplement routine, right? Because my profession, especially, we can drown people in capsules pretty quickly, like, myself included. It's just, how many capsules am I taking a day? You don't want to be taking like 90 things. So what you honestly do with people is prioritize what's going on. Oh, good. Hearts. Hey, Tiffany. Yes. So to prevent pill fatigue, we definitely want to kind of prioritize what somebody's dealing with. So that just kind of means like, okay, do you have, I don't know, seasonal allergies? Is that kind of a thing that goes on for you? And, you know, my clients know that we talk about the root cause all the time. So even seasonal allergies, we're going to be talking about the GI system, you know, and the creation of inflammation, right? So you want your digestive system to be absorbing all that healthy nutrient instead of being the place where it has to deal with your inflammation, right? So if we're eating inflammatory things, then the GI system itself is becoming inflamed. And then there's projects going on for the body that the body's trying to repair from things. And then you walk into, I don't know, cedar season or, you know, blossom season. Like Texas is blossoming right now. And so it is, you know, we will get our histamine quickly. And it's so funny because I'll be sitting here in my office and then like all of a sudden coughing or a sneeze fit or something. And then Texas is so goofy. It just hits us like that. And then drinking water, and then I take, well, and that brings me to this. Like, so here, if I were to say a multivitamin in say cedar season or right now in Texas, we might be doing something like, this is a formula I like, dehist quite a bit. So this is orthomoleculars, vitamin C, quercetin dihydrate, stinging nettles, bromelain, and acetylcysteine. That's a nice little combination that helps us stabilize our histamine pathway. So you could consider this as a multivitamin for the need you're having. The other one that is super good too is this guy, Seasonal Shield by Numedica. You'll see some similar players, but they've got some added zinc, they've got some nettles, they've got some bioflavonoids, here's, you know, grapeseed extract, you know, so it's kind of like a broader spectrum. I use these guys for different reasons, you know, so, but it ultimately depends on your body. So like a lot of times right now I'm taking dehist, you know, because of the blossoms and everything. So you might have like a little, you know, period of time in the springtime in Texas or whatever, where you're taking some sort of like, you know, support for the body. So I could think of it that way, where you think of these guys as like a multivitamin for the thing that you've got going on, right? So if it's histamine reaction, you might do some added support there. We're always chasing down root cause, remember, we're not doing band-aids. The other thing too would be, you could pick other organ systems. I mean, another good example might be the thyroid, remember, so thyroid really likes tyrosine, selenium, iodine, you know, a lot of cofactors, you know, so if somebody really is like, you know, I'm trying to nurture my thyroid, maybe they take a kind of like a multivitamin for the thyroid. Like that's really, that's a smart thing to do. The other would be like adrenal. Like you could do the same thing for the adrenal system. So you could have all these just, you know, adrenal support formulas, and you could think of a multivitamin for that. So like in your own body, you would think, okay, what are my priority systems? What am I trying to heal? What do I need to balance? Okay, and then I'm going to do a multivitamin specifically, oh my goodness, for that. And that actually is really smart to do, right? And then, you know, it's for a season, right? So as you get the bank accounts filled, and then, you know, you're working with your doctor, you're doing your labs, and then you see something stabilized, then maybe, I always love it when I can kind of dive into nutrition. So when I don't have to take the multivitamin or the, you know, support that we're doing anymore, and now I can just, you know, do it with healthy nutrition. You know, that's always a good moment for people. So yeah, that's actually a fairly good thing. Oh, let me show you another. Okay, so this guy, Mitochondria. So I would say, like, barring like things people are working on, probably if I were to look at like one support area the body needs, like if I had to say a multivitamin for most people, it would be something to support the mitochondria. Like that's where my mind would go, because the mitochondria, remember, are like the batteries of the cell. We breathe oxygen in order to make ATP, and that's your body's like energy currency. So that's what's helping you heal. That's what's helping you do everything, wake up, all of it today, you know, be you today. So when you're looking at inflammation, stress, all that kind of stuff, really the organ system or the little organelle that might pay the price heavily would be the mitochondria, wouldn't they? Because think of the mitochondria they need a really good lipid bilayer. They need that electron gradient built up so that they can transport electrons to oxygen, right? There's a lot of biochemistry that's needed for the mitochondria. So when we are under stress and under inflammation and have all that happening, and maybe even exposed to toxic things, then what happens is we have oxidative stress that comes into our system, right? And you're looking at, like, say, okay, how do I minimize the oxidative stress on a mitochondria? That would be like bioflavonoid city, you and your big salad. That's a good start, you know. But if I were to like pick one multivitamin that I think most people probably need, to be a total hypocrite because I just told you that would not be reasonable. But if I had to pick something, I would probably do a thing like Mitochondria. I think Integrative Therapeutics has a version of this too. I can't remember what they're called. Anyway, these mitochondrial support formulas, that's my point. Mitochondria is my favorite. And so it would be like 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening. And so here you're going to read this, like, you know, very broad spectrum kind of like nutrient profile. And then over here, we've got a really good concentration of, you know, N-acetylcysteine. Here's some carnitine, malic acid, alpha lipoic acid, mixed tocopherols, green tea extract, broccoli seed extract, inositol. So all these guys, right? So what you're doing is like you're bringing a ton more antioxidants into the system. So it would be like, yes, you're eating all your good stuff, but then also, you know, I'm going to work on mitochondrial health, you know. So if I were to pick one thing, that would probably be the thing for all systems, because your body needs mitochondria. It's got it everywhere. And thinking like, okay, how do I maximize my energy production to support healing in all systems? So that's what I would pick as my pick of the litter multivitamin, would actually be probably Mitochondria by Ortho. Now, that said, if I had to pick something based upon a depletion, I usually instead do just a plain Jane B complex, you know, and there's a ton of them that I use. This is just one that's sitting on my desk, honestly. So Methylplex by Numedica, Methyl B complex, Activated B complex by Integrative. Those guys are all great. So you have to watch though with that methylation, because if someone's really anxious when you give them methyl support activated Bs, that might aggravate their anxiety. So you're going to talk to that person a ton. And that strategy is different for that person, okay? But most of the time, people do have a deficit in their B vitamins, in like methylated B, methylcobalamin, B6, riboflavin, you know, that kind of stuff. So you'll give a nice broad spectrum B vitamin, making sure you have asked the person about their anxiety. And if you're unsure as to whether or not they're going to be aggravated by a methylated B, you'll start with a real low dose. But if I have people with mental health stuff, and we will start with even just hydroxy B12 and a folinate, you know, so unmethylated B vitamins, we'll start them there. But a lot of times, like if I were to pick a multivitamin, it would be probably some type of B vitamin, you know. And people get this mixed up too. They're like, well, I take B12, and I'm like, there are other B vitamins. So it's a B complex that we'd want to give you. And let's take the other ones, you know, because you're just taking one of the Bs, you know. And so you can kind of work that. So yeah, multivitamins, I think nutrition is the key thing. If you need to take a multivitamin in some way, a powder form or a capsule form, like we mentioned, probably tablet form would be the last. And then if we're not needing a multivitamin, you would really prioritize your health needs. So if you're working on your thyroid, your adrenals, all that kind of stuff, there's different kind of categorical, like specific multivitamins for each like organ system. So that usually is more useful. That said, if I had to pick one multivitamin for like the tissues of the body, it would be something to support the mitochondria. And Mitochondria is like my favorite one, so I'll use that one quite a bit. You know, that one in addition to eating healthy. And then sometimes I will do like, yeah, the B vitamins. Oh, good. In what cases would you recommend, would you only recommend P5P? So P5P is active B6, remember? And so P5P is really interesting. That's a good question, because P5P And a lot of mental health type stuff. So P5P is actually a cofactor for a lot of different areas in neurotransmitter formation. You're going to see it for dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine balancing. You're going to see it in serotonin creation. So I've been to a continuing education too with somebody who's talking about mental health, and they were like, if I had to pinpoint one B vitamin for like, if I had to help a lot of mental health issues and I had to pick one B vitamin, it would be P5P, right? So P5P is a cofactor for a lot of that. So you can test B6, you can test it in the serum. So yeah, that would be a major thing. I've had a case where we had to handle excessive hemoglobin, and sometimes excessive hemoglobin is actually a B6 anemia. So sometimes you'll chase that down and you'll give only P5P. If in cases where I want to, if somebody's got a really touchy nervous system and I'm trying to figure out like their anxiety, yeah, you won't shake their tree too hard and you will pick one. You'll be that thing where you're I'm picking one thing, because that person might not be able to handle too many balls in the air, right? Like, so if we're juggling a lot of things, it's going to be too complicated, and to be kind of streamlined, but also be effective, P5P might be the one you pick. Yeah, I'm thinking about any other things. B6, there's a lot of, P5P is used a lot for egg quality. So you might see it, but I won't see it like just used it alone. You would see it with another, you would see it actually with like a methylated formula and stuff. So, for fertility, you're going to use the whole B complex in addition to P5P. Yeah, that would probably be the reason, is if I'm working with a very, very specific type of B6 anemia. Second would be just mental health. You're just trying to streamline something but be effective, but not make too many changes all at once. So then using that P5P is a good one. It's absorbed best into the tissue. And remember, B6 is the one B vitamin that you can be toxic on, right? So that people get this wrong all the time, and I want you to know this, because I've even heard medical doctors say this incorrectly, because they're like, oh, it's water soluble, your body just gets rid of it. Nope. Yeah, there can be excessive amounts of B6, and B6 toxicity signs and symptoms are like numbness, tingling, usually nausea, like they don't feel good. But ironically, in hyperemesis gravatum, meaning like morning sickness of pregnancy, that's treated with P5P. But again, we're talking about like milligram dosages. We're paying attention to the dose. So you're not going to give like 500 milligrams of B6. That's always going to be a toxicity, So in a case for hyperemesis, you're going to do a very low dose. I have to go look up the dosages, but I do think it's probably between 10 and 50 milligrams, so you're going to start with a different dosage of all that. So that's a good question. Good, you guys. All right. I think we're going to get back to work. I have so much work to do. Anyway, but next week, maybe we'll talk about something fun. I'm reading a book about germanium right now, which is really interesting. The other is, there's a couple other topics that I think are interesting. The estrogen production in the brain. Oh, hey. Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. I'm glad we can just like all geek out together. It's fun. And there's a neat article that I stumbled upon that was actually talking about, excuse me, speaking of these allergies. Remember how I said it hits you right quickly? Anyway, I was looking for resources to figure out other places of estrogen production in the body besides the ovaries, right? Because I knew the adrenal system, but I knew there were other tissues that produce estrogen. Of course, your fat cells come up quickly. Your fat cells have aromatase, right? So like your fat cells can turn out estrogen. Guess who else can make estrogen? Up here. Your brain makes estrogen. And then I stumbled upon, I'm not done reading this article, so maybe we'll talk about it next week, but I stumbled upon this really neat article that talked about estrogen production in the brain and how it is associated with Alzheimer's. And so in especially women who are going through menopause, their brain fatigue, brain fatigue, brain fog, all that kind of stuff kind of comes through. Oh, good. I'm glad. We might talk about that next week, is the estrogen production in the brain and how it affects your cognition and how it affects your everything. And that makes us understand maybe like our choices for bioidentical hormones and things like that, you know, because if you have the genetics for Alzheimer's, maybe you need to be on bioidenticals. Maybe that factors into your choice when you're trying to discern all of these choices for yourself. But yeah, I will try to get through reading that, and maybe we'll talk about that next week, because it's kind of a fascinating topic. But cool. All right, everybody, go eat healthy. Remember, you can't out supplement a multivitamin. So you can't, or no, how does it go? You can't out supplement a bad diet. That was the take home on one of these trainings that I did, was you can't out supplement a bad diet. So you can try, and you're going to do your best at some points, but really nutrition does have to change. And if you are in that boat where you have to just take multivitamins, just know that you know, got to get serious about some habit change at some point in time. So yeah. All right, everybody, it was good chatting with y'all, and go have fun. All right.